I'm Michael. I'm 79 years old. I'm sitting alone at my kitchen table as I say this, and there are more names in my head than there are chairs left in my house. That's how life narrows if you live long enough. Not all at once, quietly. I wasn't supposed to be the one still here. I've outlived men stronger than me, kinder than me, smarter than me. I don't say that with pride. I say it because when you reach this age, survival stops feeling like a victory and starts feeling like a responsibility. Like you owe the truth to someone before it's too late. I watched a video earlier today, an old woman talking about life. She was right about almost everything. I know she was right because I learned the same lessons the slow way, the expensive way. I was born in 1945 in a town in western Pennsylvania that barely shows up on maps anymore. Steel town, smoke in the air, men coming home tired and quiet. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about shift, paychecks, and who didn't come back from work that week. That was normal to us. That was life. I've been a son, a husband, a father, a widower. I've buried friends who thought they had more time. I've watched my reflection age past the man I still feel like inside. And I've learned that regret doesn't come from the big mistakes you see coming. It comes from the small ones you don't notice until they have stacked up too high to climb over. People like to think wisdom comes from having a good life. It doesn't. Wisdom comes from paying attention while things fall apart. The woman in that video talked about fate, about how parts of your life are written before you're born. I believe that too. Not in a poetic way, in a practical one. Things happen that are completely out of your control. A heart stops. A drunk driver crosses the line. A doctor says a word you weren't ready to hear. But that's only half the story. What no one explains when you're young is that the damage doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from what you do afterward, or what you don't do. I got married at 21. Her name was Linda. She was sharp and funny and impatient with the world. I loved her in the way a young man loves someone, like possession, like certainty, like tomorrow was guaranteed. We worked hard. I worked overtime. I told myself I was being responsible, providing, doing what men were supposed to do. What I didn't do was notice the distance growing between us. I didn't hear what she was trying to say when she said she was tired. I didn't ask the second question. I always assumed there would be time later. Time to talk, time to fix it, time to slow down. That assumption followed me for decades. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I was there technically. I paid bills. I showed up to graduations. But presence is more than attendance. I learned that too late. The cost didn't show up right away. It never does. It showed up years later in silence, in phone calls that stopped coming, in a marriage that turned polite instead of warm, in a house that felt functional, not alive. At the time, I thought this was just how adulthood worked. You trade closeness for stability. You trade honesty for peace. You tell yourself this is normal. It isn't. I didn't know that yet. Linda died when I was 58. Cancer. The kind that doesn't give you a long warning. By the time we knew what it was, we were already counting weeks instead of years. People said all the right things. They told me to be strong. They told me we had a good life together. They told me I was lucky to have had the time we did. What they didn't know was how much of that time I'd spent somewhere else. I remember sitting beside her hospital bed one night, the machines making their soft mechanical breathing sounds, and realizing there were sentences I had waited too long to say. Apologies that no longer had a place to land. Questions that would never get answers. I held her hand and told her I loved her. She smiled. I don't know if she heard me. I don't know if it mattered anymore. After she died, the house got very quiet. Not peaceful, quiet in a way that makes you hear your own thoughts too clearly. That's when regret gets loud, not dramatic, persistent. It shows up when you're folding laundry alone, when you reach for a second cup of coffee out of habit, when no one asks how your day was. I kept busy. That's what people like me do. I worked longer hours. I volunteered. I fixed things that didn't need fixing. I told myself I was moving forward, but really I was avoiding standing still long enough to feel what I had lost. My kids were grown by then. They had their own lives, their own worries. I didn't want to burden them. That's another lie people my age tell themselves. That independence is kindness. That silence is strength. Years passed that way, quietly, efficiently. I told myself I was fine. Then my son stopped calling. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't a final argument, just distance, the kind that grows when no one reaches across it. I noticed holidays getting shorter, conversations staying on the surface, updates instead of connection. And again I told myself there would be time. There always is, until there isn't. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Stroke. Sudden. He was 42. A wife, 2 kids, a life in progress. I drove to the hospital knowing before I arrived that this was another door that wouldn't open again. Standing in that room looking at my son's face, I realized something that still hurts to admit. I had loved him deeply. I had also postponed him, like people do with books they mean to read someday. I assumed we'd circle back. That's when the idea of plenty of time finally died for me. I didn't become wise in that moment. I became honest about how much I had delayed what mattered, honest about how often I chose comfort over connection, honest about the way life keeps moving. Whether you're paying attention or not, I changed after that. Not in big, impressive ways, in smaller ones. I started saying what I meant when it occurred to me, not later. I stopped ending conversations early just because I felt tired. I let myself be awkward. I let myself be emotional. I called people even when I didn't know what to say. It didn't fix what was gone. Nothing does. But it softened what was left. If you're listening to this and you think I'm talking about guilt, I'm not. Guilt fades. Regret doesn't. Regret settles in and waits. It's patient. I know that now. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because no one told me, and I would have listened if they had said it plainly. Life doesn't fall apart all at once. It thins. Conversations get shorter. Visits get postponed. You assume people know how you feel because you've known them a long time. You assume tomorrow will show up the way it always has. That's the mistake. At my age, the days don't feel dramatic. They feel final, not in a frightening way, in a clarifying one. You stop arguing with yourself. You stop pretending certain things don't matter. You stop chasing approval that never fed you anyway. What matters becomes very small and very clear. Who sat with you when you were broken? Who stayed when there was nothing to gain? who you made time for when no one was watching. Everything else fades. I don't believe people regret failure as much as they regret absence. Not showing up, not speaking up, not choosing the uncomfortable truth when it was still possible. I thought success would protect me from that. It didn't. It just kept me busy while the important parts quietly eroded. If you're young, you might hear this and think you understand it. I thought I did too. Understanding isn't the same as acting. You don't feel the weight of delay until the door is closed and locked behind you. There are people in your life right now who won't always be there. Not because of a fight, not because of some dramatic ending, just because time keeps moving. And one day, you realize you waited too long. If this story touches something in you, you don't need to change your whole life. You don't need to reinvent yourself. Just don't postpone what's already asking for your attention. Say the thing. Make the call. Sit with someone instead of scrolling past the moment. I don't have many years left. I know that. I'm not bitter about it. I'm honest about it. And that honesty brings peace. If there's one thing I know for sure now, it's this. You don't run out of time suddenly. You run out of chances quietly. I hope you hear this before you do.